It makes people who are actually suffering from this disorder think that there's no hope of them ever living a normal, functioning life, when in fact there is. It is possible. What's crack? It's VangelinaSkov. You may have seen my previous video called Why People Think DissociaDID and TeamPinata are faking, meaning why people think that they're faking dissociative identity disorder. In that video, I actually had a couple of comments saying things that I had missed, so I did a little bit more research. I went back and looked again on KiwiFarms to see what people were saying about them. If you haven't seen the previous video, KiwiFarms is a forum where they have sort of gossip threads about different YouTubers and things like that. One of them is about DissociaDID and TeamPinata, and most people are under the impression that they are faking their disorders. So today, in the interest of fairness, I thought we would go over the few things that I missed, that some people commented and that I saw on KiwiFarms. But before we get into that, please subscribe and click the bell button to get notifications when I upload. I am a very small YouTuber, so I am very less likely to come up in your home feed. So the best way to find out that I have done that is just to have notifications on so that you will know immediately, and then you can go comment like first or something and I'll be like, cool. So first, let's look at the reasons they've given for DissociaDID, specifically, and for NIN. One of people's big concerns about DissociaDID is their actual diagnosis itself. NIN says that they were diagnosed by Dr. Remy Aquaron. I'm going to put that on the screen because I don't know how to say that. But Dr. Remy from the Pottergate Center. And the Pottergate Center specialize in dissociative disorders. There are two problems people have with this. One is that they say that Dr. Remy is somebody who likes to give the diagnosis of DID and who sort of pushes that onto his patients. Now, whether that's actually true or not, I can't say. I feel like no respected psychiatrist can get where they are or not have their license questioned if they do things like that, but again, I have no way to tell that. The other thing that people aren't really taking into account here is that he works in a center that specializes in dissociative disorders, which means that he's far more likely to be treating patients who have DID, which would make sense why more of his patients have DID. But again, I'm not here to say whether or not that concern of people's is true. The other problem that people have with Dr. Remy's diagnosis is that they've said that he can't give diagnoses. And from what we know, this is actually true. People have called the center and found out that he does not give any kind of diagnosis. And actually the Pottergate Center themselves don't give diagnoses. It's not something that they can do. Now you could take this piece of information and say, okay, so that means they weren't diagnosed. But there is still another route that we have to look at here. Although he can't actually give a diagnosis, he can give a suggestion of a diagnosis. And for that to be turned into an actual full diagnosis, all that needs to be done is that suggestion needs to be signed off by somebody from the NHS, which is the British Health System thing, or by a private psychiatrist or doctor. So it's likely that what Nin was saying was that he gave her the suggestion and it was just signed off by another doctor. I don't know if that's true. That would make sense to me. Another problem that people have with Nin is that she has said numerous times that she has very supportive parents. She's also said before that her father is one of her favorite people. And on that matter, I am not going to say anything. It's her family. I don't know what's going on there, and I really don't want to try and speculate or analyze somebody else's family. That's really not my place, and that's a step too far for me. But I did want to put it out there as that was one of the big issues that people had. Similarly to that, she's also said that she had a very happy childhood. And this I am going to say something on. DID is formed when you have trauma that is so huge that a child cannot deal with it. That means that there are certain alters who hold trauma and it's their job to hold it. And there are certain alters, and generally the host, who doesn't remember any of this, which means they will just have the good memories. Now that's not always 100% the case, but this is generally why DID is actually formed. So it would make sense then why Nin or previously Chloe, who are the hosts, would say that they had a happy childhood, because their job within their system is not actually to hold any trauma or trauma memories. So it's likely that to their memory, their childhood was just fine. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about Nan from TeamPinata. What I've seen said on KiwiFarms is that Nan is obviously lying because they have BPD, or borderline personality disorder. Their argument is that BPD and DID are really similar and that often the symptoms are mixed up and misdiagnosed. They also say that people with BPD usually lie about these things because they want some kind of attention or validation or blah blah blah. For now, I don't want to make any sort of comments on, ooh, are people with BPD liars, or will they make up stuff like this for attention? I feel like I want to make a video on that all on its own. I do think it's highly offensive to people with BPD to say that somebody who has it is automatically a liar. That's not a great thing to say. But in regards to the symptoms being similar and getting mixed up, but if they have BPD, they can't have DID. BPD and DID can be comorbid, which means that they can both be present at the same time. Similarly, BPD can actually be comorbid with a lot of other disorders. For example, a really common one is eating disorders or anorexia. So it's not actually impossible that Nan could have both BPD and DID. They can actually exist together. As for Nan specifically being called a liar, I don't know. I'm not in their head. I'm not gonna guess. That's just... And now for something they say about both DissociaDID and TeamPinata, and that's that they cannot possibly have DID and be able to function so well that they make videos about it. And I see where you're coming from here, and I can see why this would be true. But I also don't think that it's necessarily true. We know in most mental illnesses that there are different levels of functionality within sufferers. For example, you could have somebody with depression who is able to go about their day as normal, go to work or school, whatever it is, come home, do their stuff, but they're still depressed. Then you have people who are depressed and cannot get out of bed. It really depends on the person, how long they've been working on improving their systems, their support around them, or their coping mechanisms within themselves. It's completely individual. And if the depression metaphor doesn't work for you, think of an alcoholic. There are alcoholics that go to work, nobody really notices anything's wrong except for maybe their family, and there are alcoholics who are screaming out on the street and getting themselves arrested. So in my opinion, I don't see why it wouldn't be possible for somebody with DID to function well enough to make videos. And it's not like either of them are doing daily uploads either. They're doing them, I think, weekly, both of them, or at least TeamPinata were and DissociaDID were. Right now, TeamPinata are not on YouTube or social media, and DissociaDID are on a break. But prior to this, they were doing, I think, weekly uploads. And sometimes there wouldn't even be a weekly upload because they weren't able to get it done or they weren't feeling up to it. And on the case of people with DID being able to cope, let's look at one who I think is a really, really wonderful channel, Multiplicity and Me. They are a DID system who have a child and a full-time job, and they are able to do that, as well as making YouTube videos. They go to therapy, they have a support system, they function. It is possible. And to say that people with DID can't function enough to be able to make videos if that's what they really want to do is kind of a dangerous thing to say, because it makes people who are actually suffering from this disorder think that there's no hope of them ever living a normal functioning life, when in fact there is. There are so many people who have this disorder and other disorders who are able to eventually work on their systems, live normally, have a job, have a family, whatever it is that they want to do, and just be happy in their lives. It is possible, and I don't really want people going around saying that it's not. It's not fair to the people who are already suffering. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for this video now. I just wanted to clear up the things that I may have missed so people wouldn't think that I was giving some information and withholding some information when that's really not what I was doing. So now you have, at least to my knowledge, all of the arguments. If there's more, you can comment them, people can see them, but that's it for now. As I said in the last video, I don't think it's very useful to guess whether or not somebody has a disorder. If they say they have it, it is in everybody's best interest to just believe them. They're going to therapy, they're in their own heads, they know what they're doing, and unless you're their doctor, it's not really your place to guess. Since I mentioned Multiplicity and Me, I'm actually going to link one of their videos down in the description, so if you want to, you can check that out. And as I said at the start of the video, please subscribe and click the bell button to get notifications when I upload. And of course, share and comment and like and social media and all the other things that I am supposed to ask you to do at the end of the video. Have a wonderful day, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.